This episode of Keys to the Shop is brought to you by Prima Coffee. Whether it's espresso machines, manual brewing devices, or general coffee shop needs, they seek to pursue the most innovative coffee products, both domestic and abroad, to offer their customers. Find out more at prima-coffee.com. This is Keys to the Shop, episode 64, a look back at the lessons of 2017. Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Keys to the Shop, where we give you insights, inspiration, and the tools you need to help you grow as a coffee service professional. My name is Chris DeFirio. I'm your host for the show, and I'm really glad to have you along. And I hope that you've been having a really excellent holiday season, a Merry Christmas, and of course, a Happy New Year to you. Today's episode is all about looking back at 2017 and highlighting some of, at least in my opinion, some of my favorite episodes and kind of going through the spectrum of the best lessons from the show. It's not going to be exhaustive. Frankly, I don't know if we have time for that with, it's going to turn out to be 65 episodes this year. There's a lot of things that we've learned. And this Friday's episode is going to be similar in that we're going to look back and see what the best pieces of advice were from the 10 entrepreneurs, the 10 owners of coffee businesses were for 2017. And I'm really looking forward to that one. But before we get started today, I do want to thank our sponsor for Keys to the Shop. And of course, that is Prima Coffee. And Prima Coffee is a specialty coffee equipment supplier, and they're based out of Louisville, Kentucky. From the beginning of their company, they've just set out to make the best coffee brewing equipment available to the general public. And their focus has been on curating the best equipment for every need, from grinders to espresso machines to under-counter fridges, pour-over stations, anything you can think of, really. I think you can find it at Prima Coffee. You just go to prima-coffee.com, peruse their website, see what you can find. You're going to find a lot. They have a lot of resources as well, teaching you how to use the equipment, best practices, cleaning tips, things like that. They do a lot of research, and they put a big emphasis on having the expertise to help their customers get the right gear to fit every situation. And I can vouch for all of them there. I really love working with them locally. And I know that if you go to prima-coffee.com, reach out to them and work with them, that you're going to have an enjoyable experience as well. So my thanks to Prima Coffee for their support of Keys to the Shop, and also for their support of our industry, just providing us the tools we need to do our jobs well. So I also want to remind everybody that the Sprudgie Awards are still taking votes, and thank you to all of you who have voted and also voted in the first round of voting to get Keys to the Shop in the finals for this award. I'm super honored just to be considered in this category of Best Coffee Podcast. And you can go to sprudge.com/vote and cast your vote for a whole host of folks that are up for awards for Best Coffee Writing, Best New Products, Best Outstanding Achievement in the Field of Excellence, and of course, Best Coffee Podcast. And your vote for Keys to the Shop would be greatly appreciated. And so sprudge.com/vote. And so let's get on with our show here. So we want to get into today's episode with what's going to amount to be sort of 10 things that I have sort of lined up from the point of view of somebody who's going through their career in coffee. So starting from new barista to developing to promotion to wider industry focus, I tried to make a bit of a journey to cover a lot of ground here without taking a whole lot of time. As I dive back into past episodes, I'm just amazed that there are so many great professionals out there with great advice, life experiences that we get the pleasure of learning from and hearing the inside scoop, like the information that has been hard fought for in their personal careers, in their development as professionals. So I'm humbled by the fact that we got to just learn from them. So the first thing on the list of what we've learned from 2017 is from the episodes 31, 14, and 15. That's essential advice for new baristas, how you can advance as a barista, so a barista's guide to advancing, and what to do when you don't advance. Those three things, I think, could be taken as a set. So as a new barista, there are a lot of things that you can do to really make the job easier for yourself, or at least take advantage of the opportunities that are afforded you in the position. We're talking about such things as goal setting, crafting your mindset, giving yourself grace to make mistakes, how to, serve customers for higher reasons than simply people pleasing, things like that. And there's pitfalls too that you can fall into, like blame shifting, becoming codependent in an unhealthy way on a work environment, or a boss. You can burn yourself out by saying yes to everything and not having any boundaries. There are a lot of things in that episode. I would encourage you to go back and listen. And when we go through this list, honestly, if you go back and listen to all these episodes mentioned, it'll give you a really good tour of what Keys to the Shop is all about. And the episode on baristas and how they advance, episode 14, is in the same vein as essential advice for new baristas. It's all about intentional forward progress. It's about making sure you're doing your due diligence as a barista to do what you were hired to do it well, make sure, communicate, get the resources that you need, make sure that you're getting them, and just do your best. And there's a lot of different ways to, quote unquote, do your best. Now, in episode 15, we talked with Ann Nylander, and she talks to us about, in spite of our best efforts, what do we do when we don't advance? Is it because we are unprepared and our manager sees that and wants us to become better and then we'll advance? Or is somebody fearful of our expertise and holding us back unfairly? Both could be true, and we need to be able to perform a gut check, get some opinions out there, communicate well with our boss or supervisor, and know when is the right time to move on from a job. It's my opinion that far too many baristas throw in the towel prematurely. Far too many professionals fall into the trap of believing that they've exhausted their options and have only one choice left, and that's to leave. And if that's you, I would encourage you, first listen to these episodes, apply some of this information to your life and your career, and then come back to it and see if you are in the same place mentally where you were. These were, I feel like, really helpful episodes, and pretty popular ones too. So that's episode 31, 14, and 15. And you can also find out more about what Ann Nylander does, as she is a specialty coffee growth strategist and consultant. You can find her at annfnylander.com. So number 2 on the list of things that we've learned from 2017 is something that we learned from a gentleman named Tom Henschel. So Tom Henschel is an executive coach out in California. And that was episode 52, where we talked about solving coworker conflict. It's not surprising to any of us, when you become a barista, that relationships become the first thing that provide tension. Now, I'm not necessarily talking about tension between the relationship of the barista and the customer. I'm talking about, barista to barista, or even manager to barista. Co-workers, what kind of conflict do you have with them? It depends on what you bring to the table. It depends on what they bring to the table, and how sometimes those things don't mix well. There's a lot of communication issues. And, Tom has been super successful in his career as an executive coach at, mastering the art of conflict resolution, and successfully guided many of his clients through a variety of issues. What we learned in the episode was that there's 3 conversations that we all have in our heads, or our hearts, as it were, each time we have conflict. What happened? Like, you just kind of thinking, what just happened? How did it make you feel? So the feelings conversation. And then the identity conversation. What does this say about my identity? What does this say about who I am? And you want to engage in these conversations with purpose, because left to themselves without further clarification, your mind can run away with you and take you down roads that don't give charitable assumption to the other person, the same way that you would want somebody to give charitable assumption to you when you've offended somebody. So the advice we get was really helpful because it teaches us that naturally we start to interpret data. We start to interpret relational stress in a particular way. And these are tools that we already use. And they're tools, these conversations, what happened, the feelings conversation, and the identity conversation, can be had between 2 individuals. And when we communicate along those lines, we're going to clear the air. And not only that, we're going to pave the road to understanding. And understanding is usually the thing that's most lacking in conflict. So if you want to find resolution in a situation, whether you're a new barista or not, this just happens to be one of those things that always comes up in a career. That especially working in a service environment on a team with other people, where you are, especially now in the holidays, you might have tensions at an all-time high because there are an abnormal amount of mochas being made, or peppermint mochas or whatever. And there are mistakes made on bar because we're all tired. We might have a little bit thinner skin than we normally do. So yeah, conflict resolution and solving coworker conflict might be really appropriate for you at this point. And Tom Henschel does a fantastic job in this episode helping us solve those things. So that was number 2 on the list. Okay, so number 3 is the episode with Bruce Tulgan, Why It's Okay to Be the Boss. Something that happens in our careers is we get promoted. If you stay in coffee for any length of time, there's going to come a moment where you become somebody's boss. That is not something that is uncommon. Not many people stay in the barista position. And if you're currently in the barista position right now, in any entry-level position, your desire, if you want to stay in the industry long-term, is going to be one of advancement, a desire to lead in some way. Now, as the title suggests, there is a question that it's answering. And that question is it okay to be the boss? And of course, Bruce says, yes, it is okay to be the boss. Bruce is a researcher, an author, and a speaker. His website is rainmakerthinking.com, and they do incredible work researching generational work habits. And they have, I think, probably the world's largest survey or most comprehensive survey in terms of data collected on what people look for in effective managers, the biggest problems people have with managers, and what the biggest positives for effective management is. You can see a lot of their work and download a lot of information for free at rainmakerthinking.com. But in this episode, we talked mainly around the book that I always recommend to people, It's Okay to Be the Boss. And for a lot of us in coffee, I think in coffee specifically, it's hard for us to embrace authority. It's hard because we don't want to be seen as a jerk. We don't want to be seen as an authoritarian. And we get those two things conflated. We think to be in an authoritative position means I have to be an authoritarian. Well, it's actually most of the time the opposite. Most of the time when you have a bad boss, it's not because the boss is micromanaging or being an authoritarian, it's usually because the boss is not managing enough. And it's what Bruce calls an epidemic of undermanagement. Not micromanagement, but undermanagement. People believe the myth of the nice manager who doesn't really call people to the mat for performance issues. They want to be everyone's friend, or the myth of I'm not a natural leader and so I can't lead. There are 7 myths that we go over in the episode. And then the main things that you see if there's undermanagement in your organization is problems hide below the radar, problems occur that never had to happen, people go in the wrong direction for a long time without realizing it, and underperformers, low performers hide out and collect paychecks while high performers are frustrated by not being recognized. When you get promoted to a position of authority, you've got to become comfortable with it. You've got to be a strong, caring, hands-on, good communicator that holds people accountable and manages them when things are going right, wrong, or average, as Bruce says in his book. So go back and listen to this episode. It's okay to be the boss. And I would encourage you to also read the book. It is incredibly powerful. It's incredibly uncommon common sense. It's one of those books that I think every manager should read, or if you hope to be in any kind of position of leadership, you should read this book. So that was number 3, and that's Why It's Okay to Be the Boss with Bruce Tulgan, episode 28 of Keys to the Shop. And then we move on to number 4, and that is 10 steps to being a people-first leader. It's easy to become adept at the technical part of our job. It's not so easy to become good at the people part of the job. And in this episode is a solo episode. It's episode number 4 of Keys to the Shop. One of the more popular ones. It's a very practical guide to leadership in the cafe. Being a people-first leader has everything to do with taking care of what is the most valuable part of every cafe, the people you work with. I hesitate to say that they're assets because it creates this dehumanized, thought in our mind about people. But as a leader, you can make people do things all day long. But can you make them feel things? Can you create an environment where you are building rapport, where you are investing into their success and having people grow as professionals under your leadership? Anybody can just drive people and force them to check off things on a checklist. We've all been to a cafe where all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted, but the light is not in people's eyes. But people don't like working there. Even though it's running, quote unquote, smoothly, most people feel rough. And that's a sure sign that you don't have people-first leadership in place. This is an episode, I'm told, that has been assigned as curriculum in certain cafes where they want their employees to become people-first leaders. Now, I would encourage you to go back and listen to episode number 4, Leadership in the Cafe, 10 Steps to Being a People-First Leader. It teaches you how to just set goals, talk about work at work, giving feedback, fostering an environment that's safe for people to be able to give you feedback as a leader. Just a good list of solid, practical things to apply to your leadership career. Now, in the same vein of leadership, we have a really good example from an early episode, in episode 13, Leadership in Management Masterclass with Eva Attia. She is the Director of Retail Operations at Portland Roasting Coffee in Portland, Oregon, and we got to hear about her career developing as a leader through Pete's Coffee and her transition to Portland Roasting Coffee. And we talked with her about the way that she works with teams and how she leads and builds rapport and relationship. She says it's like making deposits into a bank and allows you to make withdrawals later and keeps a more responsive environment. She talks about how you can how you can expect more of people as a leader when they trust you. And, if you can't get satisfaction from caring for people, you might be in the wrong work. The very essence of Eva's career and approach to management has to do with the satisfaction of caring for people. And she says that one of the most satisfying moments are when people are successful and they credit part of that success to the time they did work with you. And so, she gives practical advice for leaders and how they too can create these environments where rapport is built, standards are continually raised because relationship is continually built. And that definitely one of these episodes that you need to keep at the ready to encourage you to put others before yourself and to love your position less than you love your people. So you love your people more than you love your own career and your own advancement, everything will fall into place, Eva says. So if you want a masterclass from a master leader and manager, then go and listen to episode 13 with Eva Attia of Portland Roasting Coffee. So as a leader, we talked about how, you go from being a barista and taking advantage of where you are to learn as much as you can, the essential advice for new baristas to advance. And then afterwards, one of the first things that you have to deal with is people. And you have to have conflict resolution skills. You've got to be able to have good conversations. Now, when you're promoted, you've got to be comfortable with your authority. You've got to be a good manager, a good, strong, caring, hands-on manager. It's okay to be the boss. That's the message. And then ways to become a people-first leader when you're promoted, and ways to make caring for people and managing teams well just something you do as your calling card as a leader. Now, drilling down into a specific category of leadership, a lot of us in coffee want to become trainers. And this comes in as number 6 on my list of top 10 lessons that we've learned in 2017, and that is mastering training. We got to hear from a master trainer, not in coffee, not in coffee, but training people. One of the things that I hear people say a lot who are successful in hiring is that they hire for the people skills and then train the coffee skills. There's a lot to be said for that. And I probably said the same thing on this episode. Dave Stachowiak is the host of an iTunes Top 10s Careers podcast called Coaching for Leaders. He has worked with the Carnegie Institute. He is a consultant himself. He has trained many people into a long career as an executive coach. And he comes with such a great perspective and practical perspective on training people. It doesn't matter what you do. You could be teaching somebody how to bowl or make a cappuccino. It doesn't matter. You can use Dave's framework as a method to properly apply teaching to any individual. And of course, we always want to create an environment that is catered to the individual. But Dave gave us a good 5-step framework for training. This was episode 25 of Keys to the Shop back in May. Dave Stachowiak taught us that we need to prepare ourselves for what is the most realistic time frame and, the needed resources for the training. We need to be able to personally demonstrate the thing that we're expecting people to do, give them a vision for what it is, debrief after each attempt, debrief somebody, bring them back in, teach them what went wrong, what went right, have them do it again. Go to live training, go to the bar and teach people on the bar, apply the skills in a real life situation, and then sit them down afterwards and have feedback. Give them some personal one-on-one time after that live bar application and teach them what it is they can do to improve the next time around. And you can use these 5 steps as a cycle. This is one of those things as barista trainers, we tend to nerd out a lot and try to teach people by telling them all that we know about coffee. You can't train somebody well if you're only going to just blow their minds with information. It's the same thing as trying to create a customer by telling them all this information about the coffee origin, and it just confuses them. We have to be able to train our baristas with practical steps to equip them, not to impress them with our own knowledge. So, at the heart of this, some of the preparation that you need to do, like the step 1 of this 5 steps, the preparation might be the idea that, hey, recognize that there are some insecurities that you're going to have as a trainer. And some of those insecurities are centered around the idea or the question that you might ask in your mind, do these people know how much I know? And is it important for them to know how much I know? Or is that just your ego? I'm going to fall on the side of ego. And once you get that out of the way, that you really do want to train people and equip them more than you want to impress them with how great you are as a trainer or in coffee professional, use these steps. Listen to episode 25 with Dave Stachowiak on mastering the art of training, and use these steps as tools in your tool belt as a trainer. And I think you're going to find that they are super effective. So moving on now, we have episode number 2, which is technically episode number 1 when you don't count the intro to Keys to the Shop. But this is the workflow episode with Ryan Soder. Ryan is the trainer at Center Goss Coffee. I get to work with Ryan every day. And this is the guy who has workflow tattooed across his knuckles. This guy takes workflow to the next level. And in this episode, we go over how we organize our bar, how we organize ourselves, what are the tasks that each person at each station does in order to create a consistent, high-quality, speedy delivery of coffee to the customer. This is the kind of thing where customers expect timeliness and consistency, and good workflow gives you the ability to meet and exceed those expectations, and it lets you know when you've done a good job. Some of what we went over was how we need to be thinking about workflow all the time. Where are the tools to do the job? Where do I put them? Where do they always go? Where do I always go? How we do our job and how efficiently we are able to achieve a high level of excellence in coffee is the very thing that gives you an edge as a company. And it gives you a sense of satisfaction. Like I said, the system itself, it frees you up to pursue the best rather than just limiting you with the inefficiencies that exist in a poor workflow situation and the stress that is involved in, having too many steps from A to B, all the superfluous waste of energy and space. As well as I do, that not every bar is created with workflow in mind. It's created with aesthetics in mind first, practicality last, and we all get used to the dysfunction of a poorly designed bar. And there are things that we can do to mitigate these problems. This episode is one of those episodes that can really help you mitigate those issues, create a stress-free environment, even when you have a line out the door. So go back and listen to episode number 2 with Ryan Soder, Workflow, Mastering Your Workflow. You will not be sorry that you did. And that was just a really fun time. And I'm telling you, I see the benefits of workflow all the time in our cafes. So now, speaking of stress, and of course this is appropriate for the holidays, there is the issue of loving the customer or hating the customer. So number 8 on my list of 10 things that we learned in 2017 is episode number 19 and episode number 16, or 16 and 19, whichever one you want. Episode 19 was 10 reasons to love the customer, and that was in a response to an article, one of many articles that have come out, that here are X number of reasons why your barista hates you. And it's that stereotype of this, angry, snobby barista who just resents a customer who makes, demands beyond what the barista was expecting. One wonders, if you get flustered by a customer being complicated in the, requests, you might be in the wrong line of business. I mean, in terms of chronic frustration and just being angry and bitter, lots of frustration happens on a regular basis, but chronic, I don't know, maybe do a deep dive in your heart there. But there are lots of reasons to love the customer, and we owe our job to the customer. I think it's a tragedy that we should teach, essentially, commiseration over co-creation. So commiseration, let's encourage each other to be miserable together and just gripe about the customer. Versus, no, let's get together and co-create. Let's create an environment where we are loving the customer, where we are looking for the positive in every situation. Now, how different would it be to walk into a coffee bar where all of the employees of that cafe were trying to find the positive more than they were trying to find the negatives? This list of 10 reasons to love the customer is just my way of saying, hey, there are lots of things that we can be thankful for and grateful for when we see a customer come in. And some of it might seem counterintuitive, but given a little thought, it really makes sense. And you can have your own list of reasons why you love the customer. But on the heels of this, and in the same category, number 8 on my list is Michael Butterworth, who is the co-founder of the Coffee Compass and a former trainer at Quill's Coffee in Louisville. He had an episode with us on episode 16, calling on us to raise the bar on our customer experience. This is critical, obviously, in loving the customer, is providing them a place where a great experience is had. And for Michael, some of the main things that we went over, we should focus on speed of service. We should focus on consistency and having personal, genuine service, not just a canned speech, not just something that is told us to say, but something that's genuine, something that comes from the heart. And so speed of service, consistency, and personal, genuine service, what are the opposites of these? Well, slow service, inconsistency, and not caring that much about personal interaction. And I have had my fair share of experiences where I'm left thinking they don't care, this is not that great of a coffee, and it took a long time to get it. Actually, I would say that experience is one of the reasons why people don't expect very much from specialty coffee by and large. So Michael Butterworth really gives us some inspiration here to level up when it comes to our customer experience and what we're doing for the customer. So go back and listen to episode number 16 with Michael Butterworth, and then episode number 19 about 10 reasons to love the customer. This will really help you get a perspective on the service part of our job that the technical part of the job serves. So you have great coffee, you train well, you have great workflow. Now let's love the customer. Now let's give them a great experience. That's what it's all about. Now, number 9. As we go through this list, we're a barista, we're learning, we've advanced, we've become a leader, we're learning about leadership. Now we're learning about training others, and we're learning about, the practicalities of working behind the bar and of providing great service. So here now at the place of number 9 on the list of things we've learned from 2017, it comes from Jared Truby of Cat and Cloud Coffee, episode 55. And this one is all about the keys to personal growth and development. We talked about personal development, learning from outside resources, striving for greatness. At a certain point, you feel like you've plateaued. You might be a manager, a trainer, or you're a barista, but you feel like you've really tapped all that you can in your current situation. Now, in this episode, we do talk about how you might be overlooking some things that you can be inspired by and grow in that are available to you in your current situation that you really haven't thought of before. But at a certain point, we need to really take the reins of our own development. We spend so much time being handled by other people, especially when you first start out. You're given a schedule, you're given a curriculum, you want to know the rules, and you want to obey the rules. You want to win according to the rules. At a certain point, you're going to have to start taking the reins. Like I say, you're going to have to start authoring a little bit of your own career. And outside resources are a great way of doing that. Jared talks about one of his great influences has been the influence of Disney, the Disney Corporation, learning from their leadership classes, their model of hospitality at their theme parks. But he talks about his own personal journey into pursuing outside influences and outside learning. There's a lot of things that people see in personal development that they might be uncomfortable with. And not everything in that space is for you. But what we're after in this episode has to do with how, as a professional, you can't limit yourself only to where you are to provide you with the growth that you need. So go out there and read management books. Read biographies of great leaders. Read about sports teams that overcame obstacles or explorers that did the same. Learn from the community of humanity. Learn from businesses in their successes and failures. There is a world of resource out there that can develop you into the type of person that you might not ever become if all you do is read coffee books. If all you do is think about coffee and read about coffee, etc. There's more to this than there is found only in the industry. So if you don't get into personal development, you basically sabotage yourself, and you'll end up not being the best version of yourself. Untapped potential is a really hard thing to swallow, and in the back of your mind, you might have regrets about opportunities you didn't take, things you didn't learn, obstacles you didn't overcome, even though you know you can. I remember one of the personal development quote-unquote gurus out there was named Jim Rohn. Used to say, discipline weighs ounces, but regret weighs tons. And I know that I have benefited from exploring outside resources in personal development and disciplining myself to take the reins of personal growth to benefit my career and my family and me personally has been a really good choice. And I'm thankful for Jared's influence. I'm thankful for his wisdom in this episode. And so I would encourage you to check that out to help you explore where to start, how to start in your personal development journey, taking the reins of your personal development, episode 55 with Jared Truby of Cat and Cloud Coffee. And then finally, you are a barista, and that means you are the last link in the value chain when it comes to coffee. We serve the coffee plant to people, the fruit of the coffee plant. The coffee seed is roasted and served by baristas, and the health of that seed, the sustainability and future of coffee is our own future and sustainability. The livelihood of everyone involved in coffee depends on the livelihood of the farmer and the health of the plant. And that is where we come in on episode 60, rounding out the list of 10 lessons we've learned in 2017. Serving the Coffee Plant with Hannah Neuschwander, episode 60, talks about the health and sustainability of the coffee tree. When we say we serve the coffee plant, every potential flavor, every potential blend and experience in coffee is based in the decisions made in the soil, on the ground, at the farm. And that is the work that they do at World Coffee Research, where Hannah is the communications director, and she writes a lot about coffee. She also has authored a book Left Coast Roast, a book that tours West Coast roasteries and cafes. She has her foot firmly planted in both worlds and speaks to us in episode 60 about the role that retail plays in influencing the coffee farm and the sustainability of the coffee plant. And she educates us also about the current state of coffee agronomy, some of the backstory of how we got to where we are today, where there are advances being made for the future of coffee, both to combat problems that we see now and to mitigate problems that might happen in the future, both to have a healthy plant and to have a great tasting plant as well. That's really important. We talk about all of those things in episode 60. And as we advance in our careers, we start to really become comfortable with our own skills. As a barista, as a manager, as a leader, we find our niche. We find our place. And then we look out and we are equipped with a certain amount of experience to be able to influence more broadly than just the cafe, more broadly than just our own careers. And this is one of those episodes that I think can get you really fired up to start learning more about the roots of our industry and what we can do to help as baristas. And we can do a lot, even just by being good at our jobs and knowledgeable in terms of how we influence customer decisions and educate customers correctly about coffee. There are a lot of things that we talk about that we can do. So I would encourage you, go listen to episode 60 with Hannah Neuschwander, Serving the Coffee Plant, from back in November. That was just a really good episode that gives us a broad perspective on the industry. So here we are. We are at the end of our episode talking about 2017, and there are so many more episodes that we could talk about, but frankly, I think that would just drive everyone insane, and I'm not going to do that to you. But in the show notes for this episode, I'm not going to give you all the show notes for each show. It's just going to be a list of episodes that I think would be helpful for you to just go through and review in that order that I was mentioning, because we go from, beginning barista all the way to now that you're a seasoned veteran in coffee, a broader perspective of, the coffee industry. I think that's a good cross-section of what we're about at Keys to the Shop. All of the things that concern coffee retail and the power that we have as people who serve other people coffee it's just limitless. And it's a super important thing for us to be able to continually learn, continually get better, gain more information, gain more knowledge. I really hope that you continue to make Keys to the Shop a part of that journey for you. More than that, I hope that you apply this information to your careers. I am just as guilty as anyone else in collecting information and not doing anything with it. I feel a sense of satisfaction having learned a little bit about a subject. I feel like it's changed me, or I have a better perspective. And that's not to be dismissed as unimportant necessarily, but think of it this way. They say knowledge is power, but you can run power to a house, and if you never plug anything in, you're not going to get the benefit of that power. So as you acquire more and more knowledge, you can acquire power more and more and more, but you got to plug it in eventually. You got to put it to use. You got to light the room up. You've got to light the way for somebody. You've got to apply the information, and it's better to apply one or two things thoroughly in your day-to-day life as a barista, as a manager, than it is to collect 20 pieces of information that you never really apply. So my hope for all of us, and myself included, is that we would take our influences from this year. We would take the lessons that we learned in our shops, lessons that we've heard and learned in this show, and think about what the most important things are for us to apply in our careers in the beginning of the year, and go for it. Apply the information and know that you're not going to do it well the first time, but do it over and over again. Make it a part of your life and it will become easier to do. You're not going to do it well when you first apply it to your career. You're not going to really see the fruit from it, but doing it over and over again, making it a habit, creating just changes in your brain and your psychology and the way that you approach your career, you're going to see the fruit in the long run. So that's my hope for you. That's my hope for me. And if you had a favorite episode and want to share how it influenced you in your journey, be sure to comment on our Instagram account when we announce this episode. In the comments section, going to be doing a little giveaway of some coffee. And I would really love to hear what you gained this year from Keys to the Shop, what episodes really impacted you, and in what way it has helped. So that's it for this episode. Our last Tuesday episode for 2017. It has been a fantastic year. I am incredibly, sincerely thankful for each and every one of you and for the support you've given to Keys to the Shop. I really am looking forward to 2018 and all of the things we're going to learn together then. And so Happy New Year to all of you. And as always, I hope that this show has truly given you keys to the shop.